Hello, everyone. I'm really pleased that I get to talk with David Langiulli and Margaret Katz again. We did a podcast several months ago on their channel, and I will make sure we've got a link for that in here. But I've asked them if they would talk with me as really top fundraising experts and help a little bit with one of the dynamics we're seeing among the Maestro level leaders that we are executive advisors for. And that is this: once you're accomplished, once you've got a great, big, good, strong network and you're respected, people want you to come and advise them. Would you sit on our board? Would you especially sit on our nonprofit board? And that often means, would you be, in the end, a donor? Or would you help us find and connect with those who could support this organization? So joining a nonprofit board is going to bring some degree of fundraising or support raising responsibility. And so, David and Margaret, I'm just going to jump right in and ask you this question. When someone like this comes into their space and they have this recognition and they're being asked to join this board, but they don't really have fundraising experience, they have experience of leading an organization, but not so much raising support for an organization. How can they even participate well?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's a good one, isn't it? And it's a
Yeah.
hard one. That's what I hear all the time.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to me is it's actually a question back to, back to these, I think your word was maestros, high level people. But it's about being so incredibly intentional about the board that they choose. So it's not
Hmm.
about doing, like, oh, this board does good work, or I kind of think it's cute, or this organization. If they don't feel a really, really deep connection and passion and alignment with the work that's happening, if they don't have some personal place inside of them that vibrates with the work, then they should keep looking until they find that. I think so much of the time people join boards because they're asked or because a friend is on the board. And without that connection to the work, fundraising is painful. It's
Hmm.
hard, and people find all the reasons in the world not to do it.
Hmm. Do I hear in there a little bit like you shouldn't treat this like a trophy that you collect? This isn't just one more consumer experience or one, well, it's my turn. I better do the responsible thing. It just sounds like you're talking about a category altogether different than any of those.
I am very much. I mean, I advise the nonprofits that I work with to agree with their board members that they will make a donation that's in their absolute top tier of what they give to any place. It's not a specified amount, but most people who are philanthropic have different categories. And if they don't care enough about this nonprofit, that this nonprofit easily slides into that top tier of giving, for example, like, then no, then it's not a fit, then thanks for the coffee and we're going to keep looking.
Oh, that's great. And that
Mhm.
raises the stakes for this relationship and what I'm hearing you say. This needs to be seriously considered, seriously rendered when the giving is done. It's not just, again, something that you accumulate. Uh, David, I'm wondering what you were thinking and what you would add here.
I would add to that that many successful maestro level leaders are asked to be on nonprofit boards because of their talent, their expertise. And it's a big yes and that maybe the and part never gets articulated. The and part is what Margaret is talking about. And um, even if it's not, and this is where some existing board members who may be recruiting fall down, the big and is, and we expect this to be your number one or number two priority in terms of giving. So I think it's important that if you are asked to be on a board and the and part is not articulated, then you should start to ask questions whether or not, there's an expectation for giving. Right, Margaret?
Absolutely. I do say a no. There are boards at all different stages of development, right? And some of them need board members who are going to help them stuff envelopes for the mailing. And some of them just need their board members to raise money.
Sorry about all that.
That's okay.
It's still
Mark
recording.
disappeared, but now this is like board members. Sometimes they disappear when they
Sometimes
start talking about
sometimes-
money.
Yeah, start talking
Oh.
about fundraiser and poof.
And they just
Thanks.
disappear. So Mark, you beautifully modeled what happens.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks for your patience. I hope it doesn't happen again, but thank you for the patience. And David, I lost you right as you started to say what you were saying. So if you don't mind continuing.
So just to sort of summarize it, there's a big yes and in the conversation about board membership. Oftentimes, Maestro level leaders are recruited because of their talent, their skill sets, and maybe the and part being, and we expect you to give and help us with fundraising. Maybe that doesn't get articulated very clearly. And so I was suggesting for your audience that they start to ask what the expectations are for giving and fundraising, and be prepared that the answer will be, we expect this to be in your number one, number two priority for philanthropy, and we expect you to, tap your network and help us raise money from your network as well.
I'm gonna yes and David. I think people who are successful executives, they're really, really great actually often at qualifying people, right? I mean, they would never hire a banker or look for a business partner without a pretty, if not exhaustive, then certainly thorough set of questions and clarifications. And often I see these same people join boards with just zero interaction about what type of board is this? What kind of help does the board need? I mean, there are boards out there where, they are expected to stuff envelopes, brand new fledgling organizations where they have no staff and they're really just looking for their board to be working volunteers, and other boards at sort of the other end where they just need people to set policy and make donations, and all the places in between. And it never ceases to amaze me sometimes the mismatch that ends up happening from the failure to ask questions and get clear what is it that you need your board members to do.
Well, let me pick up there with a question that might flip this a little bit, because we've described the mismatch, I think, a little bit here when a person who's an accomplished leader is being asked to join a board and to bring some of their influence and capacity, and they maybe don't understand the responsibility, particularly on the fundraising side of things that may come with that. What about the flip with an organization that sees, hey, this person cares about us. There is a resonance. Our cause is a cause they care about a great deal. But where does the organization get it wrong in inviting that accomplished leader to join? That maybe the reverse part of the vetting would also matter. I see you both smiling, so let's hear it.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, like there are these are like dominoes that topple in both directions.
Certainly everybody gets to own some accountability for bad communication. And I think probably the classic mistake that nonprofits might make, when they ask somebody who has resources, that they assume, people with money are donors, are going to be donors. And it's a mistake that is pretty common, as opposed to people who are givers also, who are, philanthropic, who have that as part of their routine. And I think the people who work in the nonprofits, who write the policy and the description, or who start to do that for their boards, they lack clarity as well. I think, these are hard things to say we expect you to do. And I know many nonprofits who have not been doing that. After they work with me, usually they are doing that, but before, less so.
Something else here. It's just coming to me now, like I think it's okay to be invited on the board, passionate about the mission, willing to give in your top, as one of your top philanthropic priorities, and willing to say, and that's how far it goes for me. I'm really not willing to ask my friends. I just am uncomfortable. I think that's actually okay. Now, Margaret and I, especially Margaret, trains board members on how to get past that unwillingness to have conversations with friends and people that are close to them to give to the organization. So that is a hurdle that can be overcome, but I don't think it's, I mean, you have to be clear as a nonprofit, like what are your expectations? Are you expecting, at a minimum, I think a board member has to give. If not, then it's just not a good fit. Secondarily, I do believe that it would be worthwhile for board members to go out into their networks and say, here's an organization I care about, and will you join me? And but if that person is unwilling to do that or uncomfortable at first in doing that, I think that's okay. What do you think, Margaret?
Yeah, I mean, fundraising has a lot of parts, and not everybody has to do all the parts. So I think, again, it's a communication. What is the board member willing to do on the possible activities of fundraising? You know, do you want people to be able to be in your home, and are you willing to host something? Would you like to just give us your names and not come on the ask? Are you willing to share, do social media? You know, there's a long list of, will you come with us and just sit at the table when we ask people you don't know? These are all ways that board members can very helpfully engage in fundraising, but I think it's up to the board member to choose which activities are on offer, and it's up to the nonprofits to be really clear what they need and hope for from their board members.
Thank you both. There's one other question I want to ask you. So let's now assume we have a nice match. Passion aligns with capacity. The communication is clear, and now we're off and running. And let's say I am that board member of that organization, but I'm sitting with you and I've got your ear for a moment, like I do right now. And the question is this: what is one top of mind, top of the list item that you find yourself regularly telling board members like me about what it means to govern well and garner support for the organization? What piece of wisdom do you have to go to again and again and again to help us do this kind of governance work, fundraising support work well?
I'll weigh in on what I think is missing, and that might inform what is necessary and possible. What is missing, and we talked about this before we got on the recording, is authenticity and integrity. This is what is missing. So when board members are not authentic and not paying attention to integrity, that is to say, does every board member honor his or her word? Does the leadership honor their word to donors, to the people they serve? What does it mean to be an organization with integrity? I don't even think people are asking this question. And so from a governance standpoint, you'll read, oh, here are our bylaws and here are our articles of incorporation. And it's like, okay, well, everybody has that. And what do you stand for as a person of integrity? Or do you even stand as a person of integrity? This is a question that boards should be discussing from a governance standpoint. And Art, you and I have talked about some organizations where there's clearly large ones, global ones, where there is no integrity and leadership breakdowns are happening because of that. I'm not going to name names here, but we've had that conversation. That's my thing. Maybe Margaret, you have something else?
Yeah, I think mine is probably a subset of what you're talking about. And that is to say that there are two things that I see that come up and that seem to just be inherently there unless boards are very intentional. The first is, boards have a constant turnover, right? It's So as soon as we achieve magic, if we ever are lucky enough to achieve magic with one group, you know, there's term limits, people go off, new people come on, and the ways in which we incorporate new people, the ways in which we do that seems to fall down, you know, again and again and again. So I think good governance, I don't mean a day of orientation, I mean a really thoughtful, you know, way to incorporate new people, which leads to the related part two, which is at any given table, there are people who have ease in speaking, in, you know, jumping into the conversation. And then there are other people who may have super wise things to say, but feel, you know, they're sitting at a table of people they might know from the community, who they might feel a little intimidated by. Maybe they're a little bit more introverted to start with. And I think boards could do a much better job, and in fact, for the most part, do a pretty poor job right now of designing with those people how to encourage them to get their voices in, what works for them, how can we welcome, you know, all the opinions that we have here, rather than just the, you know, the people who are comfortable talking, always talking.
Well, I'm going to just take this moment to say thank you both for taking a few minutes to kind of lay that out. You were telling me you have a course that you're getting ready to launch, which has a lot to do with the being part of fundraising, not just the doing part. And I'm struck here, if I'm a board member, and I am, for some nonprofits, that I think I would want to talk with our executive directors, our chief fundraising officers, and saying, hey, what about that integrated part of you, that reflective part of you, that stuff that puts gas in your engine to have sincere and authentic relationships? Here's a resource for you. So we're going to put a link to that in the notes from this video. So again, thank you, Margaret. Thank you, David, for joining me for this conversation.